Welcome to the first edition of Conversations That Matter 2022. Now, since it's a month of January, many of us maybe have started resolutions for the new year. We're thinking about projects or things, whether they're small or big, that we would like to see realized in the months ahead. And so tonight we have a special guest with us who will share one of her ideas or resolutions for 2022. And the beautiful thing about tonight's conversation is that it's involving a product that's not, or a program that's not in its finished form yet, but is in the process of being birthed. And we're doing that in order to excite and inspire you to take on perhaps new projects in the year ahead. So with that, I want to take a moment and welcome our guest, Gina Low. Gina, we're thrilled to have you with us tonight.
Thank you. It's nice to be
here. So tonight we have just a few questions for you, and I'm going to begin by starting really at the beginning and asking if you could start today by telling us a little bit about the project that you are in the process of pulling together this year. Would you mind doing that for us?
I'd be happy to do it for you. And I appreciate your terminology of pulling together. My starting out 2022 has been a challenge, just like the last 2 years have been. And so it really is an ongoing process that I'm interested in, and not just over the last 2 years, but especially during the last 2 years. And what I'm interested in is finding a way to effectively and successfully use existing resources so that we can address problems of the people who are unhoused. I prefer that term to homeless, but I will probably slip into using the word homeless occasionally in conversation. But to make the point, people who are unhoused. And my resolution is to stick with it. We have a lot of challenges to face in order to address the issues of the people who, and we're all involved in this in one way or another. And I would like to look at prevention, and I want to look at solutions. And so that's my resolution, is to stick with it.
So, Gina, it's exciting to hear you begin to flesh out this idea for your resolution. But there are so many ideas out there, so many important issues and causes. I'm curious how it was that the plight of those who are unhoused came to you. I don't know if there's any experiences or stories that are attached, but it would be great to get a feel for what drew you to this.
Well, in my immediate life situation, where I am right now, on a daily basis, I'm faced with it because I see it. And I can't see it and not feel something about it. I have lots of feelings about it. I feel angry that it exists, that the problem is there. I have very strong feelings about the fact that this just isn't right. It just isn't right. And there's something that we all can do about it, I think. I'm not sure what it is. And so I get frustrated and anxious, and I don't like what I see. And so what happens is I have to live with myself. And so in my immediate situation where I live, when I see someone who is homeless, I give them a bottle of water at least. Or if I'm making dinner and I have, I can make for more than who's in the house. And so if there's extra and sometimes I buy so that there's extra. I mean, a batch of chili can go a long way. So to put it in a Ziploc dish and hand it to somebody is something that I can do. And I started doing that. And I think that I found like that I felt better with myself. So that was really very self-oriented in a way. But I think, where does that come from? Taking action on something is something that I think was in my home environment as a kid growing up. And it was, my mother was a teacher, my father was a medical doctor, and he, but he, my father was a medical doctor who liked to work with people. And he, if they were, farm people or whoever they were. And that goes back to his growing up and how he grew up. And with the influence of other people around him who would go and help people who were on Indian reservations. And so that was my father's learning as a young man. And I was fascinated by that. He'd tell stories about that. And I, as a kid growing up, I just thought that's the way the world was. So that's where that comes from, I think. My parents were very welcoming to other people, and they really felt very strongly that you help other people. And that positive attitude was that because you can. That's why you do it, is because you can. Because you're there and they need something and you do what you can to be helpful. As a Girl Scout leader. My mother was a Girl Scout teacher, and we learned, my sister and I, was repeated frequently. You always leave the place better than when you found it. And that included our bedrooms. So I think a lot of it came from home life. A lot of it came from where I went to school, most definitely. We had the missionary bank on the desk, and it was a school that was part of a small German Protestant sect in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And I went to that school from the time that I was 2.5 years old until I graduated from high school. And we were really like family to each other. And when the missionary bank on the desk was collecting pennies and nickels and whatever you brought in, that was going to go to Bluefields, Nicaragua to build a hospital. And that was exciting. And there was a sense of personal attachment to that there were people there in the hospital, and the doctor who was taking care of them was somebody that was the father of people that I knew. So there was a sense, a tie, personal tie to that. And that was really important. We sensed that we were part of a family. That was a tremendous advantage growing up. Tremendous.
So Gina, as you were sharing with us, this passion for helping those came along very early in life from your parents in the home life and the causes that were around you, both near and far. And one of those causes that's really stayed with you for your lifetime is a particular passion for feeding the hungry. I'm wondering if you could talk about where this passion has come from, especially more maybe recently. You've given us a great overview of your personal history, but today, where does that passion come from, if you have a story or an experience you'd like to share?
Well, sometimes it's right there in front of you. And at least that's how it has happened for me. And where I live in a Latino community, where I am very happy living in a Spanish-speaking community, because I am bilingual. And in front of my house, there's a street light right in the little parkway in between my house property line and the street. And underneath that street light at night, when I was out walking the dog, there was a man who was working on a bicycle, fixing bicycles right there on the little parkway. And he had his truck there and he had bicycles out, and he's using the light of the street light to see what it was that he was doing. And it was, like, I guess it was about December or January when this was happening. I can't quite remember exactly what time of year it was, but it's been something that has become a relationship that has lasted for several years. And so he had a little dog, and my dog and his dog played the little together and whatever. And he was right straight out in front of my house. So after I came in from walking the dog, I thought, oh, well, I've got some extra chili, as a matter of fact, here. Maybe he'd like some. And so I went out and asked him, I didn't take the chili. I just asked him, would you like to have some chili, in Spanish? And he said, can I? Are you serious? Type response. And I said, sure, I have some extra chili. If you'd like some, I'm happy to share it. And he said, yeah. So I fixed some chili and some bread, and it had been obvious that I thought there was a problem with economics in this, that he wasn't a come to your door repair person. But I suspected that he was going to be staying in his truck right where the truck was. And I was right. And he stayed there and was a very pleasant person. And he was very reticent about accepting anything from me, but I offered. And the next night, I asked him if he'd like to have, if he'd like to do that. And we developed a friendship after this. And then when he was able to move his car when the street sweeper came, and he'd come back. And I was happy he came back because the dog was really cute and he was very friendly. And even though he had a very strong speech impediment, it was possible for us to understand each other and communicate. And, bowls of chili and egg sandwiches, you come together over something like that. And then he asked me one day about he had papers, and he wasn't sure that they were the right papers about something. And so I helped him with his paperwork. And he had something about the dog and something about getting it registered and whatever. And I helped him to take care of what needed to be taken care of. Today, I'm very happy to say, he is no longer in front of my house, and he moved to other places after that during the years. And there were litters of puppies born, and the dog got fixed. And now he and the dog are living in a tiny house, which is a project of the Hope Rescue. Now the name is eluding me, but the Hope of the Valley. That's what it is. Hope of the Valley. And they have sponsored the development of different projects in San Fernando Valley. And they are housing almost 1,000 now, or it could be over 1,000 people in tiny houses. And the great part about that is that it's not just a roof over your head. It's addressing the complete situation. And so that's, I'm very happy that he is in that place, that is going to give him an opportunity for an address. It's going to give him an opportunity to get mental health treatment and physical health treatment and camaraderie and 3 meals a day and a start on making a life for himself. There's no way you can do that in the back of a truck.
No,
That's a temporary situation.
thank you for that. So Gina, as you were talking about where this passion came from, there was really something beautiful in particular in what you said. When so many people talk about what society calls the homeless, or as you've called them, the unhoused, oftentimes there's sort of a fear of them. They're perceived of as the other, and that at best we might write a check or collect a can of food in order to assist them. And while those things are important, you really took it to the next level by reaching out and overcoming perceived fears or obstacles and building not just relationships, but friendships. And I'm assuming that your faith or your sense of the big picture kind of played a role in helping you reach out and embrace your sisters and brothers. Could you talk a little bit about the role that your faith played and how it was that you overcame what for some people might have been fear and just built these wonderful relationships and friendships?
Well, it goes back to what I was taught as a child and what I believe today comes from that. A lot of it comes from that because I found that it works, that my life works best that way. And I've had the opportunity because of what I believe. I believe that we're equal, Craig. I believe that we are created equal to one another, and that the problems that I have and what makes me feel joyful is probably going to do the same thing for someone else. And I think about what it is that I need. When Israel, my friend out front, when he was hungry, I know what it's like to be hungry, but not like he knows what it's like to be hungry. And it's so much more than just being hungry. The food is one part of it, but the total part of it, if you're ever going to be able to stand on your own and have the opportunity to grow and become the most that you can be, you need a lot more than food and a warm jacket in the winter. You need love and understanding and camaraderie. You need a friend. And people, human beings, have the ability to recover. They have the ability to grow. And I think that it's possible for us, all of us, to reach out just a little bit. It this isn't stay with just people who are unhoused. I'm drawn to that, and that's something that means a lot to me. But everyone in their life situation can reach out and help another person grow in some way, I think. And it's been a tremendous joy for me to have the opportunity. And I hope other people will think about doing that, because it's just another person, and God knows it could be me. It really,
Amen.
really
Thank you.
could. It really
Absolutely.
could be me.
And in these challenging times, that
Yes.
sentence really hits home. Thank you. So when many people face a problem that is as big or pervasive as something like hunger or the unhoused, a whole lot of people out there would feel completely overwhelmed and end up throwing their hands in the air and walking away before they could even get started. And so I find it fascinating that as you set your resolution or your sights for 2022, that you didn't feel overwhelmed, that you didn't walk away or give up. What is it, Gina, that really helps keep you able to hang in there and not walk away or feel overwhelmed?
Well, I think that my life experiences are very helpful. I've had the opportunity to be in some, to live my life as I have felt called to live my life. And in the process of doing that, I have found that if I see something that I feel drawn to, that I feel like, oh, I could do something about that, maybe, and, like with Israel, for example, it was a bowl of chili. I could give him a bowl of chili. And it's amazing what grew from a bowl of chili. And, so the process that I've used this time, and I have used many other times in my life, and come to be better adept at it, I think, is that I have first find out what the problem is. If you think there's a problem, if you have that feeling like there's something that maybe I can do here to make this better, leave the place better than the way you found it. So educate myself, do something about finding out what I perceive as a problem. Is it a problem? I don't know. I may perceive it as a problem, might be a problem for me, but it could very easily not be a problem for the other person. So find out, and not to make assumptions. That's the worst thing I can do, is to make an assumption. Ask a question, say, do you want chili, before I just make the assumption and go and get the chili and give it to him. A bottle of water is a different thing. I want them to drink the water, so I just give it to them, because otherwise they're going to be dehydrated. I don't try to do something of organizing other people or really putting my money behind something until I really know that there's a problem from the perspective of the person that would be receiving. And so that's really what I need to know first.
Gina, I'm going to jump in, and as we continue with this, just to share an experience of mine as well. Because again, there's so many well-intentioned individuals or agencies who think they understand, but what you're talking about is really acknowledging and their dignity, their self-respect, and their experience. And you not only ask, but you do something that you're so good at, you listen to the answer. I was in a situation years ago where someone was making a value judgment about someone who was living in the streets because they had a cell phone. And the person perceived that as a luxury and thought it was inappropriate. Well, they had no clue that for that person living in the streets, the cell phone was not a luxury, it was an absolute necessity and a lifeline to the world. So I so appreciate what you shared about humbling ourselves and not thinking that we're the experts simply because we have a home, but rather really listening to the experience and the expertise of those living the challenge themselves. So thank you for that wisdom. I'll
You
go ahead
know,
and
Craig, one,
I'm sorry about that little bit of a hiccup or glitch there, but boy, this is such important information. And before we move to our last question for the evening, Gina, I'm wondering, is there any either misconception or some aspect of the wisdom that you've learned from those living this that you would like to share with our listeners this evening?
well, um, I think that most people don't understand. I know I didn't really understand that there are thousands of people. Um, I don't think that there's an accurate count, honestly, right now of how many, but we're close to 60,000, I think, just right here in the San Fernando Valley. 60,000 people, and that's children and families. And I think, how does that happen? Well, it happens, I know now, so quickly for some people. They had no idea that that was ever going to be where they would end up. They weren't prepared for it. They didn't pack a suitcase for this. They just, one day, they could no longer stay in their apartment because they lost their job. Maybe they spent all their money on health care because their mother was sick. And maybe somebody died in their family. Crises happen all the time to every single family that there is, including my own. And I am lucky enough to have enough of a backup so that when that crisis comes, we pull together or whatever, and we manage to get along. But there are an awful lot of people in this world that do not have that luxury. And when the car breaks down and you don't have money to fix it, guess what? You haven't got a car anymore. And when that car can't be moved, guess what? It's going to be towed and you lose it, and fines come on top of you. And if you can't pay the rent, and then can't take care of have to get the kids to school, and these aren't awful, horrible people. They did something wrong, and therefore God's punishing them and putting them on the street. No, that's not what this is about at all. These
No.
are young families that had a hard time. A lot of them are like that. And older people who got separated from their families. They don't know where their families are. And their families can't find them either. It's really something that is heart-wrenching.
Yes, and I know there are so many other misconceptions about people's choices or judgments that people make and whether or not they worked hard enough. I was really touched this last week when I was talking to a clergy friend in St. Louis, and they had their church being used as a shelter one week, and he looked out at 4 a.m. and he saw this group of folks on the stoop getting ready, and he went over to ask what was going on, and it was a young mother of 3 who was in the shelter, and she had 3 kids in school. They were in different schools, so she was leaving at 4 a.m. so that she could get each of the children to school on time. It's a
Wow.
powerful example of what you're talking about. And when we hear those stories, and when we move beyond just writing checks or collecting cans of food and really get to know the people, we learn that so many of our conceptions or assumptions or stereotypes are so wrong. Gina, what an incredible conversation it is that's grown out of your resolution or your desire to do what you can do to make the world a better place. And as we think about this in big terms, there are a whole lot of folks out there listening who will view this and have a desire to help with some problem that is facing the world today, but they have no clue about how they could get involved or even take that first step to begin addressing the problem. So I'd like to close tonight by asking what piece of advice you would give someone like that who's currently standing on the sideline, wanting to get into the game and help, but not sure how to do that. What advice would you give to help them get started?
I think the most important thing is to recognize what you're feeling. And if you really feel like you want to get involved, talk with the people that you love and care about that, about what it is that you're feeling. And even for the people who are in your own family or at the school that you go to or that you see all the time at the grocery store, talk to people about what it is that you really, truly care about. And then the thing that you can do for yourself is get yourself educated. Find out what's going on. That's just find out what's going on. And you can do that sometimes best if, for instance, if you're interested in working with the unhoused, then go to a place where there is some organization that is working with those who are unhoused, and tell them what you want to do. Talk to your councilman in the community that you live in. You can also do what I did. One of the things that I did was I realized, there needs to be a bathroom for these people. And there are places that supply public bathrooms. And you can talk to your councilman and you can say, there are a lot of people who are in a certain area, and I think that there should be a toilet put in that area on the street. And you can ask them to do that. And you know what? You just might get a bathroom over there. It certainly would be helpful to them and better for the community. And your councilman could really be very anxious to hear from somebody like you. You did that.
Well, and I know even in the neighborhood of our church, for instance, things like a bus line or a bus stop or access is another huge issue or lack thereof. So all of these are important things that grow out of the education that you were talking about. Thank you so much. So Gina, I want to close tonight by just thanking you from the heart for sharing your vision or your resolution for 2022, because it's such a great example of how just one person stepping forward and educating themselves and getting that education, not just from books, but from the lives of the people who are living these issues and causes, is so powerful. So thank you so much.
You're welcome, Craig. It's really been a pleasure to share this with you. Thank you.
Excellent. And what I admire about Gina so much is, and she'll chuckle when I say this, some of us watching might say, well, boy, Gina is special, but I could never do that. And Gina would be the very first person that would argue and say, nope, I'm not special. I'm just like you. And that's the beauty of the vision she shares, because any one of us can step forward and join arms with Gina whether it's the cause is the unhoused or whatever matter of justice. But Gina, you inspire us and make us more likely to step forward in 2022. Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that, we will draw this evening's conversation that matters to a close. And we hope that you will join our YouTube channel for our next conversation that matters. Will be coming along in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So we look forward to continuing the conversation. And thanks for being with us this evening.